And welcome to episode number 5 of a 6-week series called How Your Food Choices Affect You and Your World. Episode number 5. I'm Pamela Ziemann with Elemental Cuisine, where we help people transition out of the sad diet to a healthy plant-based lifestyle. And with the whole lifestyle, it includes so much more than food. Natural food is really important. And how we take in other things is just as important. What are we taking in through our eyes, visually? What are we taking in through our ears? What kind of media are we listening to? What kind of relationships do we have? Are there chronic complainers? So what are we taking in through our ears? And then also, what are we feeding our spirits? What are we feeding our spirits? Who was it? Somebody said... If I could only have, it was Leonardo da Vinci said, if I could only have bread or flowers, I would choose the flowers. And I think it's so key to really nourish our spirits, especially for the entrepreneurs, the people who are doing creative projects to really keep their spirit alive. And that is why I'm so excited to have our guest today, Nicole Levac from a small town outside of Montreal, because she is a nature girl. And I knew we were kindred spirits because when we were on a hangout together, first time I had seen her, there was a person in Washington, D.C. talking about the business of water, and she came in and said, what about the spirituality of water? And I thought, I love this woman, and I think you're going to love her too. She's a personal transformation coach, and we have her here today. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, nice to be here. I'm so excited to share a little bit of my passion for nature, and you're right, you're definitely right. It's a feeling. It's such an important part of who we are and the self-nourishment. So thank you so much for having me.
Totally. Self-nourishment has gotten a little bit of a bad rap. It used to be, when I was growing up, that it was very selfish to think about ourselves. But why do you think, let's just dive right in, right? Why do you think it's important to nourish ourselves without this feeling of guilt about doing it?
Oh my, that's such an amazing question, because it's true. A lot of us have been shown that taking care of ourselves and looking after ourselves is something that's very selfish. And when you start looking at it, if I'll give you a few examples of what it does is when we start nourishing ourselves, we start being able to tap into what is rightfully ours, to bring who we are exactly into our world. So if I take an example, especially women, there's a lot of givers, men as well, but I work a lot more with women. My client base is much more women. But we give so much of ourselves that we forget that it's taking care of ourselves that's the most important. It's like if I take a jug of water and if I take the jug of water and I keep giving it to everybody around me, my jug of water is going to go dry in a very short period of time, and that's what we've been taught to do, is keep giving, and keep giving, and that jug of water doesn't replenish itself. So what you end up giving is little drops of yourself, and that depletes your energy, depletes your self-worth. It depletes our soul in our nourishment of ourselves. So when you know how to tap into how to replenish your own jug, it's not a selfish thing. It's something that's completely it becomes a great tool to be able to give, and give freely of yourself, and you know exactly your limits. You recognize, and it's not a selfish thing.
Without the resentment that some people may feel. And I would like to share your example and ask the listeners out there, women, if you're setting the table, whose plate do you put down first? And when we first talked about this, I thought about my upbringing, and my mom, the biggest giver around, would put everybody's plate down first and then her own plate last. And I think if the people listening to this just think about it for a minute and just notice, do you fill yourself up first, or are you giving to everybody else first?
And I always, even to go further into that example that I gave to you, is just look at, even when you're putting it on the plates, what are you keeping for yourself? What are you giving to others? A lot of us will give, that nice big piece that that you bought for yourself, or that fruit or vegetables or whatever you're eating. You chose that because it looked succulent and it looked so good. And who you're serving it to? You're serving it to somebody else. When you keep some for yourself. I'm not saying at first it is difficult. It is difficult. It's something that we have to learn, because it's such a learned way of doing things, to think of others first. And it does. And in the beginning, I had to learn. I was the most giving person available, and I had struggled with not feeling guilty and choosing myself first.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and that's the first thing. And when I started looking at myself as to how I was feeding my family, that's when I came up with that example.
And
And
isn't it totally different when you do nourish yourself first? The feeling that I get when I give to other people, it's this feeling of abundance and love and joy.
yes,
It isn't like, well, I better do this. It looks good. That's the way to do it. It's a whole different
yes.
feeling.
Yes, and you're so right, and it's such an amazing feeling, because I always thought, well, if I can give it to myself, what's wrong with giving it to somebody else? You know what I mean? Like, if I was keeping the last piece for me, if it was good for me, why can't it be good for the last person I'm going to be serving? So that's how I started being able to get over the guilt of, it was fine for me. I wasn't suffering. I was very well very well fed. I was, you know what I mean? So that's how I got to the point where I could get over the guilt. And it's such a huge part of who we are when we start giving. And it feels so great to be able to feel nourished and nourish others in a way, because it becomes a flow. It becomes a feeling, like you were saying in the beginning. It becomes a feeling that I feel good about myself, and I share that goodness with you. It's not oh my God, I have to give you everything, because I'm just keeping what's left over.
Beautiful, beautiful. Did you learn some of that from nature? I imagine you did.
Oh my God, nature has been and still is such a huge part of my day-to-day life. And I spend a lot of time in nature. Obviously, I go and visit nature every day. And that's I sit with nature and listen. And this listening is there's such a deep connection, and there's so much knowledge, and there is no judgment in nature. There is no guilt in nature. There is not. It's pure. It's pure knowledge. I feel, for me, nature has always been the best way to connect with the universal soul. It's to me, everything is in nature for us to learn about ourselves. And it is about nourishment. It is about growing and surviving. And nature's growth is not always about growing up. It's about growing in all directions. So I think, for me, nature has been and still is, like, I still spend humongous amounts of time in nature.
Yeah, it's very healing too. I've heard that if you look at something that is the same but yet constantly changing, when you just gaze on that, for example, a fire that is the same but is always moving, or a stream or a river or the ocean that is the same but always moving, always shifting, you just feel healed. And I believe you are healed when you take the time to really look at those things. And I thought it's actually ourselves as well, because we are the same, our soul is the same, but we are constantly changing, constantly moving and shifting.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And we're not stagnant. I love your example of fire and the stream moving and shifting, because that's how we are. And that's what I find out in nature. That's the kind of lessons that I listen for. is all that great wisdom that is there. And depending on where I am in my life, I'm learning what I need to learn. And that's a lesson. I'll hold your knowledge of that, and just learn even more.
And there's so much knowledge. I just wanted to share a comment from Nancy Ann Steely, who's out there in the audience, and she says, when I'm synced with nature, I stay tuned to the natural rhythms of my body, and I'm less prone to rush and be impatient. And that is such a good comment, Nancy Ann, and it's so true that I feel when I'm in my head and I'm not connected to nature, there is this tendency to rush and be impatient and think, oh my God, I have to work with this artificial time that Raymond talked about as well, artificial time, and nature has its own timing.
It's got its own rhythm, and that's such a huge part of what we learn from nature, is when we start recognizing that we do have our own rhythms. And we do here, because of where I live, I have 4 seasons, and they have taught me a lot about who I am as a person, and who humans are as people, because we are often rushed. And winter is not a time. I had a daycare for 7 years. There was no rushing 6 kids getting dressed for winter. There's a whole process that has to take place when you're getting them dressed to go outside. So there's a rhythm that you learn through nature, and that's such a huge. It's definitely a on point comment about the rhythm and slowing down. And I think that's probably why I love living in the outskirts like that, because I think it's so important, because we do have a personal rhythm.
And to never take nature for granted either. I live in a small town as well. I moved out here. We have access to the river, the mountains, the rainforest, the oceans, and it's so beautiful. And I want to just encourage people who are listening to this to just look around, because you have nature around you too. You might look out the window and see the sun. You might look out at a tree or something in your own environment that will connect you to nature, something beautiful. And even, you know, trees that are dying and leaves that are falling is very beautiful. And I know for me, I don't feel so alone. I live out here alone, but when I'm in nature, I never feel lonely, ever, because we feel this interconnectedness with everything that is. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing that I think we just can't take it for granted.
And it's such a vibrant part of our lives. And you're right. And when I lived in a city for about 12 years, I guess, when I went to university. And it was luckily there was parks, there was places I could go and connect with nature, and I was able to find those small little gems inside of a city that were such a blessing, and they were very vital to being able to stay within my cycle, within my own connection to myself, and to really hone in on where I was in my life, and how to nourish my soul, and how to nourish myself as a person, so that I could keep growing. Because nature that's the first thing that it does. It nourishes itself first. And it's because if it doesn't, it won't sustain itself. It's a sustainment. It's a sustainability thing. Whether it's because it's dying, it's nourishing the earth, and there's a whole cycle that is within nature about this nourishment of self. And that's what, as humans, in that rhythm and that cycle, there's so much more than just the growth process, you know. And it's such a nature teaches us that nourishment comes in, like, and you're right, you're right on point when you're saying, if the leaves are dying, if the tree is on the ground, just look at how beautiful it is, because it is giving nourishment back to Mother Earth, and it's
Nourishing
allowing
herself constantly.
yes. And that's what Mother Earth is, such a huge, huge teacher of how to take care of ourselves. And if she doesn't take care of herself, she can't take care of us. So it's
Right. Do you have another example other than the leaves falling? I know I've heard some things about the water that goes up to the sky and then it comes down as rain and it just has this natural cycle. Do you have any other examples of how Mother Earth nourishes herself?
there's all kinds of, if you look at just the cycle of the tree that grows, and then it comes a time, with time, and time in nature is very different than our time. The tree will fall, and if some trees they last a little bit longer, but the tree will fall and then it will disintegrate. It will decay. It will, it's gonna go through the whole process of death, decay, decomposition. Then it's gonna become a fertilization. Then it's going to become that gestation. There's going to be, because that tree goes through a process that is part of nourishing the Mother Earth. There's 5 steps when you look at if you break it down into very quickly 5 steps. It's the death of the tree, then it's the decay, decomposition, then it becomes a fertilization, which is all mandatory to the nourishment of Mother Nature. And then it's the gestation, that it's that seed that's right there, but it's not grown yet. And then it's the life that comes back out of it. Then it's the growth that comes from it. And that's the cycle that you see in nature, and it's in us as well.
Beautiful. Yeah. And we are coming up to Valentine's Day here, the holiday. And we talked about being our natural self. And just as people can feel very comfortable in nature, I think most people feel peaceful and calm in nature when we're around people who are real and natural themselves. Don't you just get a sense of peace and calm around them, and vitality as well? It's the whole thing. But every day I'm trying to chip away at what isn't really me. What is something that is not me, and how can I let go of that so I can let my natural self shine out there and actually contribute, to accept where I am and also contribute back to the world. It's really amazing how we've gotten so far away from nature with, the holidays, where we're just buying all this stuff that we really don't need, rather than, I think what people are really looking for is just to come back to who they are and to be able to share that in a loving way with themselves and other people.
Yeah, and that's what Mother Nature teaches us, because Mother Nature doesn't need anything. It has everything it needs internally, and it grows from that. There's such a beauty in nature, in the simplicity, and I always say the simple complexity of nature, because it's so beautiful. It doesn't need the gifts and all the store-bought stuff and all the stuff,
Right.
that we humans seem to equate to nourishing who we are. And that's what we forget. We forget that we are part of nature, and we are very at the bottom of who we are. We are a simple complexity of nature. And if we start chipping away at those parts of ourselves that we've learned, we've gotten them, like I said, like I was such a huge giver. I learned to be a giver because I needed to be loved, and all of
Right.
the whole healing part of my process was definitely chipping away at what didn't belong to me. But I wore it as if it belonged to me for the longest time. So when I chipped away at it and became like nature, much more simple in my complexity of being me, there's no guilt
Beautiful.
involved. There's no
Yeah.
guilt involved. It's just pure love for myself. And by showing love for myself, I'm showing others around me. And in my case, I use it for my family, for my clients, because it's so important. People forget that the love that we give outside comes from inside. Nature can't share with us anything if she doesn't take care of herself. And
Right.
I'm completely
And it's
blessed.
also about accepting where we are. Mother Earth, you know, there's no judgment, there's no need for approval. It's just accepting where we are right now. And to be curious. I love that about you, Nicole. One of the things I really am drawn to you is that you're so curious. And you're always like a little child. It's getting back to that sense of awe and wonder about nature. It's like, let's go exploring. There's so much out there. You don't have to go to the stores to find a bunch of stuff. It's right there. It's so amazing.
And you're right, and it is. It's so funny because that's such a huge part of who I am, and thank you for noticing it. It is, to me, nature has everything. There's no amount of store. To me, an outing is so much more rich to be in nature than any store. Don't get me wrong, I'll go shopping once in a while, but it's not something I prefer. I will go outdoors many more times before I go shopping.
I don't know if the camera can pick this up or not, but this is something that I just found in nature, and it is just so beautiful to me. I mean, how could anybody make something that intricate and beautiful? It's all around us if we just look. And it also reminds me, Nicole, I got to share this. I was reading this book this morning, Awake in the Wild, which is Meditations in Nature. And Albert Einstein, all the greats, you know, Leonardo da Vinci, all the guys really have this appreciation for nature. And he says, Albert Einstein says, the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. His mind and his eyes are closed. So we have to, you know, reawaken ourselves. You know, it's like we have to, you know, through people like you and getting out in nature and just reminding ourselves. There's another great song by Yale Name who goes, when you're feeling sad, go to the river. And I love it. And that's my teacher too. If I'm feeling out of sorts, if my business, you know, is confusing to me, I go to the river and I always feel better. I imagine that's true with you too.
Oh my God! And you hit the nail right on the head with that one. And that's something that, especially business people, we get so involved with our business that we keep being involved in the doing, and wanting to do and push and push through. And it's like, if you listen to nature just a tiny little bit, you'll realize that nature allows itself to rest once in a while. And resting doesn't mean stopping everything you're doing. It means taking a step back to really appreciate yourself in your life. Because your business, or as business owners or whatever, our business can't move forward if we don't take care of ourselves. And it's so important, and that's what nature teaches us, is it always takes care of itself. That river keeps replenishing itself with whatever comes in, whether it's the rain, whether it's, you know what I mean, like and it's there for others. But if it dries up, it can't help anybody else. So it's got to look after itself first, and that's what it's so important to take the time to take a step back and take a little bit of the peacefulness from nature and bring that into your life. I've had people tell me, it's like, oh my God, I've had a client, he brought in a little piece of earth in his office, and that's what he said. He says it's because he worked in an office, and it was in a big city, and he wasn't around nature. So he said whenever he took 5 minutes to play with his earth, which was like a little sandbox thing there with a little scraper, he was grounding himself, and it allowed him
so true. Yeah, just to hold on to a rock. I had a crystal around here. You know, just to hold on to a rock. Sometimes, okay, I'm out with it. I actually sleep with rocks, okay? I'm just going to say it, because sometimes when I can't sleep, I will put a rock in my hand, and I feel so grounded and so back to Mother Earth that I just fall right to sleep. And there's so many things that we can do. We don't have to have all the plastic, don't even get me started on plastic, but we don't need all of that stuff if we're just aware of that. And we could go on and on with this topic, Nicole. I'm just so happy that I met you, and it's nice to know that there are kindred spirits. All the people watching live or on the replay, I just love you because you're tuned into nature and you want to learn more about nature. You respect nature and you want to be more natural yourself, I imagine. And it's just very refreshing for me to know that there are nature lovers out there and who appreciate the beauty and the wonder and the healing that we can get from nature. What do you have coming up, Nicole? What's on your agenda as we wrap up? Or what would you like to leave the listeners with?
Basically, if you want to learn a little bit more, because our lives are around our daily life. My daily life is around nature, so it's very important for me. But I can bring my knowledge to you guys, so that's my passion. But if you want to touch base with who you are and really hone in on that part of yourself, feel free to reach out to me. I've got elemental meditation on my website, and I've got stuff coming out in the next few months that are going to be, I'm just working on different things right now, so it's all coming in the next few months. So
can you give us a little taste of it? We have a couple minutes left, and I wonder if you would mind just sharing a little bit, maybe one round of the meditation with earth, water, fire, and air.
Oh, sure. That would definitely. So if you take the time when you're getting ready to connect with the elements, because I love to work with the elements, just make sure to be very comfortable with who you are. So just sit very comfortably, and put your feet on the ground, and feel your feet really well honed in onto the floor, and just sit very comfortably, and take a deep breath. And as you're taking in a deep breath, invite the element of earth to enter through your feet. And every breath, as you inhale, the element of earth enters your body, and as you exhale, what is not yours leaves your body. So when you inhale, and it'll help you to ground yourself. And when you're doing this meditation, just invite the next element, which is the element of water. And invite the element of water to come in through your head and just ground you in your element of earth, so that both elements work with you and align you with who you are. And there's 4 elements. Learn to work with the element that you prefer to work with, but keep in mind that all 4 work in tandem, work together. So you always want to make sure that you invite the element that is yours, but include the other 3 as well.
Wonderful. Simple and complex. I love it, Nicole. And thank you so much for being here and sharing some of your wisdom with us. If you'd like more conversations like this, I invite you, the listener, to subscribe to my channel, because I'm bringing people on like this who just have a lot to share with you. But they have nourished themselves first. So have a wonderful day. Thanks again, Nicole, for being here.
My pleasure.